Welcome to What One Thing, a Smart Meetings podcast where we ask successful people what made all the difference in their life and career, so you can learn from their journeys and spark your own growth. Today's guest has been bringing energy, technology, and heart to the world of meetings for decades. He's someone whose smile can light up a virtual room and whose expertise has helped thousands of people around the globe create truly engaging virtual and hybrid experiences. John Chen spent 10 years at Microsoft, earning 2 U.S. patents before founding and leading GeoTeaming, a company that specializes in tech-based team building and leadership training. He's been virtually meeting for over 38 years and is now the CEO of Engaging Virtual Meetings. John's also the author of 2 best-selling books, Engaging Virtual Meetings and 50 digital team building games, and has produced over 4,000 virtual meetings, including an 8-language webinar and the only 100% live virtual conference in the training industry. Everyone, please welcome my friend, the always engaging, always smiling, John Chen.
Thank you, Devon. Glad to be here.
John, super welcome. Welcome. It's amazing to see you in this context because you're sort of omnipresent at our events, speaking virtual, digital, hybrid, smiling, emceeing, co-hosting, moderating, recording. Again, you're omnipresent, but I'm so glad that we have an opportunity to dial into you and what's made the difference and what has really inspired you to take this interesting journey. So, first question, we're going to kick it off. What drew you to virtual meetings and what was your earliest memory of connecting online?
Ooh, what drew me to virtual meetings? I think even as early as college, I remember being a student. I went to UC Santa Barbara, go Gauchos, right? Santa Barbara, California. And I remember sending an email, all our professors had office hours, and it's kind of intimidating, right, to go talk to a professor. There's important people. But I did have a real question about his assignment. So I sent him an email, and I got a reply back in literally a nanosecond. And it suddenly dawned on me that this is why email, for instance, is so powerful, because I have access, and it felt like safe access to somebody who's important, like a professor, and have it be instantaneous. And that might have been one of my first early parts inside of virtual meetings. I think I also had access to computers early on. My dad was a doctor, but he really wanted to be an audio engineer, but I think his parents wouldn't let him. So he, of course, bought it and created an entire recording studio. And a lot of it also had to do with computers. So I have access to very early, something called CPM computers. This is like pre-Apple. It was a computer with 2 hard drives. And how do you know it's so old? When it would access the hard drive, because it was a magnet, it would pull the screen. Like the screen would distort for a second until it stopped reading the drive and come back, and you would do things like play Donkey Kong text, right? I think I just aged myself a lot there, Devon.
Maybe a teeny tiny bit, but I bet you there are some people who are having a huge nostalgia moment right now.
OG. I'm going to try an OG this whole talk.
So, you were in virtual and hybrid space before it got popular for reasons that we do not need to name again. But tell us about one of your favorite virtual meeting moments. Is it that 8-language event, all-life conference, or was there something particularly special that reaffirmed why you spend so much time in this space?
Oh, virtual meeting moments. Well, I love that you call, the virusy thing like the Voldemort, right? Like it's the virus
who shall not be named.
Not be named, right? Which, especially in the meeting world here, all right, or smart meeting time, it's like the meetings world was especially hit by this. And I think that virtual meetings came around. I think one of my first virtual meeting moments is that was related to this Voldemort moment, because we had been researching this for over 38 years, and we found things that worked. I was a member of the AEE, the Association of Experiential Education, where one of my great mentors, Dr. Simon Priest, he was an expert on how we use, for instance, ropes courses and outdoor programming to help change people. But he was really interested into technology. He saw it too, right? We could use technology like a ropes course to create these interactions to do things. And all the ropes course people are like, no, we're Birkenstocks, we're outdoor. That'll never happen. Technology's too cold, blah, blah, blah. But we did it. And so we showed an example as early as 2000, I think. We came to the conference at a happy hour. We put a computer in one room and hardwired Ethernet to the other room so that we could have a video conference. And we ran an experiment where people first gave a rating of how much they trusted the other person, right? Let's say it was like a 5 or 6 if they didn't know them or whatever, something neutral. And then they were both instructed to tell a story about themselves or about something for 5 minutes and then trade. And when they came back in, statistically, people trusted each other 20% more after having a interaction over a computer, over a video conference. And that's when we think we saw the light that says technology is not this cold thing that everybody, but most people at that time brought it out to be, that it actually has the potential to bring us together, to bring us closer, to allow us to trust more if we just used it in the right way. So that was one of my favorite virtual meeting moments that led to, things like this 100% all live conference was with good friends at Training Magazine. And this is our 44th year that they were going to run a virtual conference. And they just really wanted it to be the most engaging thing. And they called me and they said, John, we want this. We've never done this before. It's a virtual conference. You're the person. You're the guy. Come make it most engaging. And I thought what was great about that other virtual meeting moment is this never lead a virtual meeting alone, Devon. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? Like some people tried to do it, right? They tried to do it themselves and they were like in tears. Some people produce meetings and were in literal tears after a virtual meeting or a virtual conference. And what I told them is that we did this. We actually got 200 volunteers, speakers, ambassadors, other people behind the scenes. So we gave them extra information. And those 200 people helped it feel engaging for the 1,200 other attendees. And the hallmark of this, Devon, I got to give a shout out for our Eat, Pray, Love. Elizabeth Gilbert was the keynote.
Wow.
And this, again, COVID gave gifts. Right? Yeah. COVID gave gifts because they tried for over a decade to get here. But every year in February, when this conference is held, she's in India. Like the stuff in their book, she really does. But this was the one year she couldn't be in India because nobody could travel anywhere. And so they went to do this conference. I think it was February 2021. It's still like a year into COVID. Oh, I said the word Voldemort. Damn it. and so she came in to keynote this conference. And again, this thing opportunity opened up for it. She led one of the most amazing, it's still to me, I have seen thousands of speakers on virtual. Elizabeth Gilbert did something magical in that keynote where somebody 38 minutes into the keynote said, I feel like I'm having a one-on-one with Elizabeth Gilbert in an Italian cafe. Send. And I look over at the participants list, 650 people are online. How do you do that? And she didn't even share her screen. She had no slides, no share screen, no poll, right? She did it purely by using the camera and audio, the microphone, to connect to over 650 people on virtual. And it was astounding. So that's one of my favorite virtual meeting moments, is that ability to say, we can have a large conference and it can really be meaningful if you do it the right way.
Thinking about all the times we've been online and it goes to one of those polars, right? You can tell people are like crying, they're not into it. You feel almost the coldness because you're sort of robbing that humanity warmth. But you've become kind of our expert on reframing that, on making it human, on making it warm and connective. For people who haven't been on a meeting with John, there's dancing and there's music and there's sound cues and multiple screens and it's never dull. So John, 4,000 virtual meetings, all of your engagement. What are the trends? What does it boil down to? What are the pieces that you just said, never do it alone? Could you give us a couple more nuggets? Is it maybe from your books or something you've shared that you've just seen carries through to the ones that aren't just successful, but bring that humanity and bring that connective, make it warm?
Well, on the trends side, I bet heavily that a virtual only world could exist, and I was wrong, Devon. It was sad. Because the in-person world roared back. And I kind of knew that it was going to happen. I was expecting it, but I didn't know. I thought my hope was that this door that opened about virtual would stay open. And it has to some degree, but not the degree that it was like in 2022. 2022, like everybody was here. And there are definitely a number of people who have left the world and said, I don't want to go back, whatever, for whatever reason. So that's one, is that I see virtual, the return to in-person was very, very strong, even stronger than I predicted. And I'm seeing virtual come back. So things that are happening right now in Devon and trends, right? We got government shutdown, we have funding disappearing, we have layoffs. And so virtual is coming back. For lots of people are calling me and saying, we can't get the funds to do an in-person meeting, right? We want to do a virtual and we want it to be good. So that's one trend. The second trend is hybrid. Hybrid meaning virtual and in-person at the same time. Right now, the statistics I hear is that hybrid is the fastest growing format of all the format of virtual, hybrid, and in-person. And so it is the fastest growing. And it's two things that most people will tell you if you ask any meeting professional, is that it's too complicated and it's too expensive. And I agree with them to some degree, and there are ways where it doesn't have to be that. And I just proved it myself. I've run my second year of my own retreat called the Engaging Retreat and ran it hybrid. And when you get comments like, I got a PhD, she said, this is the best hybrid I have ever attended. And other people that come in and saying, I feel like I'm in the room with you. That tells me it's possible, but many people are not doing it. And like Devon and I share something really in common. We're very passionate about being MCs. One of the things that we've seen is in a hybrid, did you know, first off, a virtual MC is a must. You got to have both an in-person and a virtual MC, because the virtual people are having sometimes a different experience and you need someone to advocate and focus on them. And so having both. And right now what I've seen, Devon, is 80% of the hybrid conferences that I know of don't have a virtual MC. And that is a huge mistake. You feel like a second-class citizen. Even if you paid, money for the ticket, you get out there and you're like, I can't hear anything, right? The video is not bad, right? You're getting no reply. You are like out here on your own. Good luck.
Digital voyeurism, right? To the main stage. Like you can peek in, but you're not having an experience. And I think what you keep drawing the line between is, our digital, our hybrid, our virtual events aren't just this sort of, just sign on and watch. Here's
Yes.
your ticket. You have to create the in-person connectivity, but you have to do it through the digital toolbox. And bridging that gap to create that sense of human connection, but over the Ethernet cable, through our wireless channels, it's an art. It really is an art form.
And the science, I think one of our hallmark parts that we offer in our hybrid is that you, Devon, could be a virtual attendee, right? From your beautiful home, Texas? And what you can do is that you can actually be spotlighted on screen and have a one-on-one conversation with the keynote speaker in our hybrid. And that's one of the ways that we help you feel like you are part of the event. It's not just me representing you on chat. Devon asked blah, blah, blah. No, I want you to ask it, Devon. I want that speaker to hear your voice and see your face if you choose to turn on your camera. And so I think that's one of the things that's really important to me. And the last one is like in the in-person part, right? One of my top roles is as a producer. And number one is people who don't record their content are missing out, right? You have all this incredible content that you curated. There's multiple ways to repurpose it and or monetize it or add value. And if you don't record it, you're missing out. And the second one is, do you have an engaging producer? Often too, and Devon, I love our people in the AV industry. I respect many of them so much. And I have a whole collection of photos of AV people who spent all the energy setting stuff up. And while you're on stage keynoting or emceeing, Devon, they're back there asleep, playing a game, or watching a video. And to me, I think a producer has to be hyper aware of what's happening in the room to support you. And that's why I have things like sound. Devon forgets what she's going to say. I'm going to play Jeopardy music, right? If she wants to reward somebody, like I've got a coin handy, right? This is a photo moment and it's taking a minute for the photographer to get in place, I'm going to play freeze frame and I'm going to do some camera noises. So these are things that a producer can do to add the engagement and personality to the meeting from their position in the back of the room. And again, I think that's something that's missing in a lot of in-person events.
I love that you said the word personality. And I was just writing it down because that really is humanizing and giving the digital space that same sense of connectivity when you're really giving it a personality. and you're knowing that you're coming to something that is fun and upbeat. You know that you're going to smile. You know that there's going to be noises or music or surprises. And it creates that connectivity, that want, the anticipation, because you've created a personality around the experience. What a fantastic way to quantify it. I love that you also sort of touched on what people misunderstand the most about engagement in a virtual or hybrid event, that they think it just watching. You don't need it to be produced. You don't need it to be engaging. You're not going to give it a personality. It's just, set up a camera and watch. Is there any other misunderstandings, maybe your top one or two, other than not having a digital host for your digital experience? That's a need. But any other common misunderstandings that miss out on that personality?
I'm going to give a shout out to Julius Solaris, who posted one of the things like that I still remember to this day. And it's a picture of him with a sign, and he says, running a poll does not mean your meeting is engaging. Right? It's one tool. It's a good tool, but he's right in that part, right? Where you really have to think about the engagement inside of this. So I think that's the misunderstood part. People can think about it like a checkbox, and I think that's wrong. It's what I love to say, that what you talked about too, Devon, right? We help create the culture and the brand of a meeting, such as its personality. And that's what gets people to come back, right? If they feel good. Like one of my hallmark things to do is to play music in the break, right? Like I also do walk-on music, no matter where I'm at. I don't care if I'm virtual, hybrid, in person, in space. I don't care. But we're going to create those things. And people time after time come back to me and say, thank you for playing this music in the breaks, because it uplifts them enough to sit down and listen to another hour of content, right? It gives us, fun vibe or whatever vibe that you want. I think those things are all important inside of that. And what else do I think that is important inside of engagement? What is misunderstood about engagement? I actually had the extraordinary opportunity to hear Michael Steele talk. Do you know who Michael Steele is?
No.
He was the first Black leader of the Republican Party. Oh. And he was coming into kind of a liberal meeting. So my meeting planner was noticeably worried about it. But they told him, don't talk about politics. We want to talk about, presentation was the theme of this conference. And he came in there and gave a real masterclass of how he approaches presenting as a politician. And I thought it was fascinating. He said the number one thing, he spent like 20 minutes of his time talking about it, read your audience and continue to read your audience. Right? Like if I play a song and I see that like nobody is reacting to it, I will fade that song out and move to the next song, right? Until I get some kind of visible reaction. I mean, the last time I know I nailed a song, I put on Yeah, right? Of Little John or whatever it was. Yeah. And somebody started twerking in a meeting. and I'm like,
whether
I nailed
they
it.
knew their camera was on or not. That is the type of connectivity.
All in person.
There you go.
In person meeting, Devon. And so what I'm also talking about engagement is that I feel like kind of like Eskimos, right? We have one word for snow and it's snow. But Eskimos have like 20 words for snow for the different types of snow. And I think there's different kinds of engagement, right? One is this, I'm in your face, right? I yell, you respond, there's other things. But other forms of engagement is when somebody tells a really personal or meaningful story. And you just lean in, or something really authentic happens. When I gave an exercise, so we talked about Patrick Lencioni. This is a great exercise for those who are listening. This is a number one exercise, and I've retested it and revalidated it. It's strong. It asks people to get into pairs, and all they got to do is share a challenging childhood story. And I add to it because I actually share my own challenging childhood story, which people have often told me, said, I changed my story that I was going to tell based upon what you shared. And in the end,
awesome.
What happened was that a woman came back in and said, I'm going to tell you a story that I have never told publicly.
Wow.
And then she went on to tell the story. Can I share a little bit of this story? Is that okay, Devon?
Well, we want to hear some of your story, John, which is also really fascinating, as we continue, because, you've been in tech and you've gone this massive journey. And you share a lot about representation, which is, I know, really important. And we've connected a lot. And you've been doing more speaking on representation. So you've been a very also visible champion for Asian representation in our community. And you've told some really beautiful stories about that. So could you share how that identity has shaped the leadership that you've built the visible leadership that you've built in our community for representation, not just for your community, but for all of the other communities who want to see themselves represented.
Oh my gosh. Let me give a shout out to people like Joan Eisenstein, Gary Murakami, all right, Jenny Ng, and so many, Zoe Moore, all came around. We're parts of these things. And Joan and I were having some dinner conversations. She's just going, the Stop Asian Hate thing felt like it was never represented well in our meetings industry, right? There was a better response to George Floyd, of all things, right? And than to Stop Asian Hate when it came around. And we searched around, and nobody, Devon, in the history of Facebook had ever thought to create a group called API EventProf, right? EventProf is like the number one hashtag for event professionals. And all we did was add API to it. And nobody had did it until I did it 2 years ago. And so for those who don't know too, Asian Pacific Islander represents over 50 different cultures, right? Chinese, Japanese, Guam, all right, Samoan, Tongan, whatever you want. And there's 50 different cultures in there. We have the opportunity to be the largest affinity group, right? Of any affinity group inside of there, but it hasn't happened yet. Or this is like the Ants, the movie. It's like we have to get our 50 cultures to work together, and it's challenging. I can tell you that I'm at the end of 2-year journey, and I'm still gathering is still the number one challenge that we still have because it's 50 different cultures, right? There was a time my grandmother, there are things like that. If you go further back at the plantations, they would always keep bringing in a new minority. So they would fight amongst each other instead of collaborate against the person who owned the plantation. So some of the stuff is rooted really, really, really deep. And for my own journey, I grew up in Stockton, California. My parents took the path of assimilation, which says we want to kind of blend in with America. And so, Devon, I love to tell people I don't speak a word of Mandarin, but I speak perfect Californese. You know what perfect Californese sounds like?
I would love to know what Californese sounds like.
It sounds like this. It says, dude, right? So that's perfect Californese. And, but only later in my life, like in the last 10 years, did I make a decision saying, I want to connect more with my own community. I want to do more work with the Asian Pacific Islander community here in Seattle. And it turned out that I needed to be a leader and an advocate. In the 50 years of history of the National Speakers Association, there had never been an API NSA. And we finally, 1 year ago, put together a meeting. We all left a keynote. We were all messaging. And we were all trying to architect this meeting. And we left a keynote for 25 of us to sit in the bar at the hotel and have the first meeting of the Asian Pacific Islander National Speakers Association. And now, Devon, you can go get a ribbon when you check in. If you are an ally or you are an Asian Pacific Islander, you can now put that ribbon on our tag. This is how important these ribbons are, is that you put it on there. And it says, I represent, right? I'm part of the Asian Pacific Islander culture. And so, the first time I got that ribbon, shout out to NSA, National Speakers Association, because they listened. They listened. I said, I want an NSA, I want an Asian Pacific Islander ribbon. And they brought it out at the next meeting. And the second part is I took that ribbon, I put it on, and then I just broke down and cried, Devon. I broke down and cried because being represented correctly for the first time ever in this meeting, it just meant so much. So for all you who are meeting planners and think about these small things, the ribbon, how we introduce ourselves, how we're represented, how many Asian Pacific Islanders do you put on your speaker panel, right? All of those things are being consciously or unconsciously evaluated by all your attendees.
Thank you for sharing.
That's why I'm so passionate around it.
Yes, and the passion is so important, and I'm so glad that we got to share that with the What One Thing and the Smart Meetings family, because it's sometimes so easy to overlook how powerful small gestures are, how powerful it can be to welcome people to the community, just letting them feel that sense of belonging. And it can be as simple as, instead of just Mr. or Mrs. and the prefix, being able to choose your pronouns and see that represented, seeing the tag that says, I'm a member of this community or an ally of this community, to bring that representation. So thank you so much for sharing that and reminding us that small gestures can create belonging that has a massive ripple effect. So John, of course, there's always one question that we need to ask all of our guests here on What One Thing, and that is, what one thing do you think has made all the difference in your life and career? I know you just shared a really powerful one, but we'd love to know.
Well, before I do that too, I also want to give a shout out to Paul Venter, CEO of MPI, because he came out publicly too, and he says, right, we as a hospitality or meetings industry need to support diversity and inclusion. It's who we are, right? And so I just appreciate that. That also comes not only in the small things, but you leaders, right? These are the big things. You help create the culture that is our industry. And I just want to give Paul a shout out for that. So one thing that has made all the difference in my life and career. Well, one is, right, we all talk about mental health. And I will say that taking care of your brain is probably the most important thing. In all the challenges that I've had in my life, let's take Voldemort as the recent one. The thing that you got to do that if everything that is in your business or whatever or your life appears to disappear, the one thing that's left is you. And you have the ability to look at it as tragedy and cry and eat a pint of ice cream and do whatever you want. And that's okay, right? I'm all right with that. And at some point, it's also on you to look at this. And I think if it wasn't the one thing of innovation or creativity that made the difference in my life, I think this other piece has also made a difference in my life, and that's service. So the question I asked after I was sitting in my office with 20 events that canceled in March of 2020, instead of asking, why is this happening to me or why does this suck so bad? I asked the question, how could I help? How could I help people in such a time of desperate need? And again, I don't make vaccines. My dad, my grandparents actually were some of the head researchers at Eli Lilly. So I'm related to people who make vaccines, but I don't make vaccines. But I said, what could I do? And I said, well, I do now have this. It was 38 years of experience of making virtual meetings better. I had sat there. And by the way, we tried to sell it too for years. For over a decade, Devon, we had a whole separate company. We tried to sell it. Nobody would buy this.
No one wanted it. And now...
But now it's just time. Sometimes it's timing. Sometimes it's like, oh, wow, I really was ahead of my time. But the difference came in service and saying, how could I help people? And I said, I can't make vaccines, but I can make your virtual meeting better. And by doing that, that led me to create this class. I can't write the book for these things, Devon. I can only share with you that question and who I am, this difference of all the training I've ever taken and applying it and service put together led me down this path that helped me get me through, Voldemort, this most challenging time of most meeting professionals' life. So much so that we did this Dear World program, and they asked you to write like a body tattoo. You write on it, and you get a black and white photo. And I'm about to share a blog post on it, and because what I decided to write was COVID changed my life. Is what I wrote. And then I tell the story about how, I discovered this thing and that's really made a difference. And I can share that the same techniques have helped me through all the other big challenges. Like when my parents got divorced was one, right? When I got divorced was one. When my business got killed in the dot bomb in 2001, similar, same thing, scenarios. And who got me out of it? Me, right? This brain, right? And supported what all of my friends and family and other people who sometimes occasionally got to ask for help. And those are the things that made all the difference in my life. The last piece I really want to share too is my network, Devon. My network is my net worth. And what I can also tell you is that I'm just coming away from this conference, and we had about 40 to 50 people in person and over 200 people registered online. And all the people that came together for this conference is what made the conference. It wasn't me. I'm the conduit. But the people who showed up and who supported the idea and gave me this feedback at the end saying, that was amazing. This is like, you created such an amazing space. Those are the people who made a difference in my life. And we're in the people business. And so anytime we can make a difference with people, right, that makes my day.
Thank you for reminding us that so much of what we do is people-based, and having that be a woven thread throughout our conversation today, giving your hybrid and virtual events a personality. So I hate to always wrap up powerful conversations with amazing speakers, but thank you for reminding us that there is humanity that is always woven through our events, whether they're in person, whether they're in hybrid, or whether they're online, that personalities, connectivities, human connection is something that we can strive for, but also giving us permission to reframe our mindsets, giving us permission to think differently, to change the conversation, and to ask for help. to ask for representation, to bring humanity so that we all feel a sense of belonging and engagement. Thank you for telling us that hybrid is the fastest growing sector of our industry. And super exciting. So we'll all pay attention to that. And of course, reminding us that MCs, hosts, and human connectivity for all of our events really help to create that human connection. So John, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your warmth, and the science that helps us create more meaningful connections. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on What One Thing, a Smart Meetings podcast where every story sparks inspiration for your journey. Until next time, keep creating, keep connecting, and keep sparking change.
Smart Meetings What One Thing was produced by Bright Business Media. Visit smartmeetings.com to subscribe to your daily dose of inspiration.